Hello, this is Darrell Castle with today's Castle Report. This is Friday, the 5th day of December in the year of our Lord 2025. Although the title of this Castle Report is Peace, my beat is War today. And as usual, there's no shortage of war to talk about. Specifically, I will be discussing President Trump's 28-point proposed peace plan, along with a few words about the other war. You know, the one in the Middle East. Yes, President Trump is proposing peace in Ukraine. Perhaps he wants to turn his attention to other wars and other potential wars. Or maybe he just feels bad about campaigning that he could end the Ukraine war in 24 hours with just a few phone calls. I will be telling you what I propose the U.S. do in Ukraine and in the Middle East. But before we get to that, listen to this important information that I have for you. I am currently in the last month of my 46-year legal career, which ends with the end of December. I still find it hard to say the word retirement, but I guess that's what's happening to me. The profession of law has been so good to me. It's been great for me over the years. I worked hard to respect the profession, and it returned that affection, but it doesn't give its favors. One has to earn them. The law allowed me the opportunity to earn a good life. I'm very grateful for that. No top-down collectivized system told me what my life would be. Instead, I was free to chart my own course, achieve all that my ability could achieve. Having said all that, this is a very stressful, very busy month for me, so this will be the last Castle Report for this year. I will join you again on the first Friday in January, God willing. I plan to continue telling you each week what's wrong with the world and what I think the solution should be. Well, now, the President of the United States has proposed a 28-point plan to end the Ukraine war. So let's take a look at that plan and compare it to what my version of a peace plan would look like. President Trump promised he would end the war 24 hours after he was elected. That was a little unrealistic, as time has confirmed, but nevertheless, it could have ended rather quickly. War means intervention by the United States, and the best antidote to intervention is non-intervention. No threats, no sanctions, no weapons, no intelligence, no coordination, no missiles fired deep into Russia, no need for elaborate peace plans. The real fix is much simpler than all that. Just come home, mind your own business. And by the way, your business is $38 trillion in debt. The president must know that intervention by the U.S. started this whole thing. And this plan, though well-meaning, is just more of that same intervention. The U.S. has had its hands in this mess from the get-go. Any plan has to consider that. The Orange Revolution in the early 2000s began it. The Maidan Resolution in 2014 completed the process from which conflict the U.S. apparently thought would result in a NATO military presence on the very border of Russia. Unless we come to understand the origin of the conflict, it's hard to see how we can help resolve it. The two so-called revolutions that I just mentioned were attempts to manipulate Ukraine into a hostile relationship with Russia, from which Ukraine had no possibility of victory, even with the U.S. and NATO help. Looking back at the 2014 coup, we see two U.S. senators named John McCain and Lindsey Graham actually present in the capital of Ukraine, a capital of a foreign country. There they stood, demanding publicly that the people of that country overthrow their duly elected government and replace it with one more favorably inclined toward the U.S., Victoria Nuland. The State Department spokesperson for many presidents, including Joe Biden, was caught on one of those open mic telephone calls planning who would run the post-coup government of Ukraine. She took cookies to the protesters, and she bragged that we achieved it all with only $5 billion. So as a result of this intervention, the U.S. is left trying to manage a problem that it created in the first place. Hundreds of thousands of dead, hundreds of billions of U.S. money expended, and apparently all for nothing. Excuse me, folks. No, actually, wait a minute. It was not all for nothing. So what was it for? A recent report tells us at least the main purpose of the whole thing While the U.S. is $38 trillion in debt, Europe is trying to manage its decline under the weight of spiraling crime, collapsing birth rates, demographic destruction. Some in Europe and in the U.S. are doing quite well. The global arms industry, without which the bloody struggles in Ukraine and the Middle East would not be possible, are enjoying record profits. Yes, that's right. The world's biggest weapons manufacturers posted an all-time record $679 billion of profit in 2024. The globalists, the neocons, or whatever you choose to call them, live to fuel these companies to make them happy. A report from the Stockholm International Peace Institute reports that what we already knew, and that is that while the middle classes and the poor are decaying rapidly, arms makers are thriving as never before. U.S. companies lead the world, of course. 39 U.S. companies making $334 billion. European companies are working hard to keep up with the 26 largest European companies. They all enjoyed a 13% increase in sales. Sweden's powerful firm Saab led the way, excuse me, folks, led the way with a 24% jump in profits. One other company, Czech-based company, though smaller than Saab, was given the lead in feeding the Ukraine meat grinder. Its revenue increased 200%. Israel didn't want to be left behind. They couldn't lose out, so its companies, which send weapons to conflicts all over the world, increased its profits by 16%. This report from Stockholm concludes that the arms giants are, quote, capitalizing on high demand. Therefore, they and the politicians they bribe have zero incentive to actually make peace. In World War II, the situation was different because literally everyone, including the President of the United States, had some relative, some son in the conflict. But now, the cannon fodder role is left for others. Russia's situation has seemed dire politically at times, dire politically and economically, but not for Russian arms makers. Combined, their increase in 2024 was 23%. One might reasonably conclude that this whole war thing in its entirety is a conspiracy to destroy as many people as possible in order to make record profits for these companies. The people of the West may fear walking the streets of their cities, but they never have to fear for the health of their, quote, defense firms, because they are on the job for the first time ever. Several Middle East companies have cracked the top 100. The Middle East companies. The deal is so sweet everyone gets in on it. These companies anxiously search the world for rare earth metals to keep the killing going as long as possible. Could that have anything to do with all the talk, all the deal-making about the Chinese controlling the rare earth minerals market? Back in the Middle East, Dubai's Edge Group, that's its name, Edge Group, made $4.7 billion, much of it through drone and missile technology, which they sell worldwide. For the first time, Turkey's defense sector took in $31 billion combined. So when we discuss peace and whether this or that plan will work, we have to keep in mind that war is by far the most profitable racket on earth, and the global elites who pontificate about climate change and moral values are the same ones who profit from all the bloodshed. We should at least mention a few of the points, however, in the President's 28-point peace plan. Just mention a few. Number one, Ukraine's sovereignty will be confirmed. Number two, a full and comprehensive non-aggression agreement will be concluded between Russia, Ukraine, and Europe, and all, quote, ambiguities of the past 30 years are hereby resolved. Point number 5, Ukraine will receive, quote, reliable security guarantees. Number 7, Ukraine agrees to enshrine in its constitution that it will not join NATO. NATO agrees to include language in its charter that it will not accept Ukraine as a member. Point number 8, NATO agrees to not deploy troops in Ukraine. Point number 10, the U.S. will receive, quote, compensation for its guarantee of security. If Ukraine invades Russia, it will lose this guarantee. If Russia invades Ukraine, there will be a decisive, coordinated military response, and all sanctions will be reimposed. If Ukraine, without cause, launches a missile at Moscow, the security guarantee will be dissolved. 11, Ukraine retains the right to EU membership. 12. A global package for the reconstruction of Ukraine will be prepared. The World Bank will develop this package. 13. Russia will be reintegrated into the global economy. Sanctions will be gradually lifted. 17. The U.S. and Russia will reimpose, that is, arms control treaties on each other, including START 1. 21. Crimea, Luhansk, Donetsk will be recognized, including recognized by the U.S. as Russian. Number 24, a humanitarian committee will be established to resolve humanitarian issues, including exchange of all prisoners and all bodies. 25, Ukraine will hold elections within 100 days after the treaty is signed. 28, after the agreement is signed, a ceasefire will immediately go into effect, and all parties will withdraw to agreed-upon lines. So one thing that comes immediately to mind is that there are a lot of ambiguities, a lot of ambiguous terms in this agreement that will have to be defined and resolved. Right now, nobody seems to like it. Warhawk Lindsey Graham hates it, so it has that going for it. It has to be something good if he hates it. Zelensky hates it because there are a few Ukrainian people still alive. There are more profits to be made if he can only persuade Trump to give him more money. Russia seems at least willing to talk about it, to talk about implementation. So despite the fact that it is perhaps not the best solution, it is a solution. So I pray that it works. Finally, folks, I pray also the U.S. will not bend to the will of Bibi Netanyahu and Mr. Zelensky and their lobbyists in the U.S. Come home. That's my advice. Come home. Close down much of the wasteful foreign, quote, defense spending. Mind your own business. Reduce the deficit. Defend America and its people. That's my peace plan, folks. At least that's the way I see it. Till January 2nd or thereabouts, this is Darrell Castle. Thanks for listening.